I'm Mona, your host on Solutions, the lively show for people who had polio. Get ready to embark on a journey of empowerment and inspiration. We have episodes every first Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. Eastern Canada time. Join us for the dynamic, informative talks about polio and your needs. What are your solutions? Join us. Hello, and welcome to Solutions number 6, the lively show for people who have had polio. I am I will introduce myself. I am Mona. My twin brother and I had polio at 14 months old. He fully recovered within 6 weeks, and I remained with lower body involvement, the most common polio residue. Like many of you, I wall walk or furniture surf to keep me walking, but it's usually not a safe way. Now, here, my esteemed panel can welcome Jill. She has talked to us in the recent past about second disability. Jill will be in a few minutes.
She's not here yet, so just let you know.
But
Okay.
Jill will be here in a moment. She's had a snowstorm, but she says she will be in. She is a licensed clinical social worker and facilitator for the Denver post-polio organization support groups. With over 18 years of experience, she offers empathy and valuable insights to those navigating the complexity of aging and now specializes in understanding post-polio syndrome. Welcome, Susie. Ken, bring in Susie.
Hi.
Hi. We are going to talk about post-polio fatigue. We want to help you manage your days and your nights so life can be the best it can be for you. We will give you some ideas about preventing falls, which may be more likely to occur when you are tired. In this Solution 6, we explore how management of our post-polio symptoms of fatigue and risk for falling is such a secret. Polio, post-polio, is a second disability, which we have to deal with to be able to manage our post-polio symptoms. Before we talk about managing our symptoms, we must break the vicious cycle of pain. Pain, discomfort to start. We must recognize where and what and how this is happening. Just a few words to describe pain from sources across the web. I think I have each and every one over the past few years, yet never realized it was related to polio. And some of those words: aching, burning, cramping, shooting, throbbing, sharp, stabbing, agonizing, dull, heavy, sore, tender, distress, electric shock, intense. So first, just stop. Stop all you're doing and go to bed. Have some easy snacks ready for you to eat and lots of water right there on your bedside table. Stay there for 2 complete days. This will start the recovery process. Nothing in your life is more important than this. This may even stop the cycle. So let's try it. Susie, as a nurse, can you tell us some of the ways people show their fatigue? Ken?
Next slide, please. Next slide.
The most common described symptoms, Ken.
Next slide.
Yes.
There you go. This is how people talk about their fatigue. They did a study and they said, hey, what does fatigue mean to you? And when we look at ourselves as polio survivors, I had polio at 7 months old. I had spinobulbar, so I honestly don't know life without polio. But what are the kinds of things we feel as polio survivors when we're just worn out? we feel depressed. We can't join in with other people in their liveliness. Sometimes we don't even have enough stamina to go to the party to be with the people. We hurt, our legs cramp, our arms aren't working so well. Sometimes we know that if we go out, we're not at our best at balancing, so we have to be very careful. And all this makes us feel anxiety and stress. Sometimes when we have anxiety and stress, which you see on the top row of this slide, we lose our self-control. I know myself. I become crabby when I have had pain and fatigue, and I may not speak too nicely to my loved one when I am just absolutely exhausted. So if you look at these symptoms and you have some, know that it's not just you and your personality, but it's what we feel when we are totally tired out. Some of us are tired even when we wake up from a nap. Some of us are tired when we get out of bed in the morning. Many of us, when we're in an area where there's so many lights coming at us and so much sound, say in a big store or at a party, that bothers us and makes us more fatigued. So if you look at all these symptoms and you find that you have some of them, you are not alone. Next slide.
Susie, would you help me understand the signs of oncoming fatigue? Why do we need 4 terms for one symptom? Physical, behavioral, emotional, and cognitive.
Because we all look at it differently and we all experience it differently. And sometimes some parts of that are more apparent for us than other parts. When we go throughout our day, lots of times we can ignore our pain and fatigue, but underneath our feelings are still there. So maybe we express our feelings to someone, but they can't see what's underneath the pain, the cognitive symptoms that we aren't connecting. So we need all those words because it's a whole ball of wax.
Yes, it is. And we lose that self-control and we do show some anger. That's a real problem.
This slide depicts for you, I can picture myself rubbing my eyes like this man, pushing up my glasses. I can picture myself on the couch like this lady. I feel too tired to cook some days. I don't actually cook every day. I tend to batch cook to break it down, and you will find me in the kitchen early in the morning doing my cooking because I'm too tired later in the day. There's some days I couldn't do the wash. I bet you can identify with that too. There are days I choose not to walk down to the mailbox, which is not all that far, but I know I am too worn out to do it safely. And I can't do anything that requires concentration in the evening. My husband and I have our bedtime ritual, and it starts with watching, well, right now we're not watching the news, but usually watching the news. And then we go into watching a funny or a mystery or a medical series to take us out of the moment. So our body can say, oh, this isn't happening to me. I can just relax for a while. I also schedule time for recovery after activities so that if I go out with the girls and we have what's called a club called Girls on the Block. So we go for a Sunday on Sundays once a month. It's fun, but it's exhausting getting in and out of the place and dealing with all the noise in the restaurant where we go. And when I come home, I have to have dinner already made. I have to be able to sit down and do nothing because otherwise I'd probably go into a pain cycle. Just some tips.
Yes, those are very, very good tips. And I'm going to go forward, Ken, onto the slide about on days as we wait for Jill to come in from her snowstorm. Yes. On days when you are tired, can you skip doing some chores? I try really hard to skip things that I can stop doing. Next slide. Do you prepare meals ahead, as Susie just said, so you can take a nap when you're tired? Welcome, Jill. Nice to see you. Glad you made it through the snowstorm. I'll read the rest of the slides for now, and then we'll go back to Jill. Can you sit comfortably to prepare parts of your meal rather than standing and reaching up? This was a trick that I learned through the hardship of having my arms too tired to do the cutting. But once I sat down, I was able to deal with it. Next slide. Napping and resting. Susie, you know you nap every day and you don't let things get in your way of napping. How do you do that?
Well, honestly, I nap to survive. If I don't nap, I know I'm going to pay the consequences. And the consequences most likely are my polio leg will start to quiver and then it'll start to cramp. And I won't be able to think clearly. My mind's not so sharp. And I know because I'm a nurse at the back of my mind that those things don't go together. And I am putting myself more at risk for falls. And falling has consequences, and they can be deadly consequences. But also, it's not just the physical part of it. I need physical rest, but I need a break from life and conversation to also recharge my emotional self. When my friends, as I was discussing, and I go out, they are my friends because they always fit in activities based on my nap schedule. They know that every day at 11 o'clock, I'm going to be eating lunch, then I'll be taking a nap, and you can't count on me to get up until 1:30 in the afternoon. And then I walk out like a zombie into the room, and my husband's on the computer, and he doesn't look up because he knows better than that. It's not worth talking to me yet. I go and I put the coffee in the microwave and I make my cup, and I already have my prepared snack because I baked that ahead one early morning and froze it in a little bag so I can take one out at a time. And I put myself in front of the computer until I can be human. It's important that your loved ones and your friends know you need the nap. One good thing about having a disability is you come to know who really cares so much for you that they respect and know your nap schedule.
Thank you.
And I want to say that it's important to also have friends that shore up your willpower to stay to it, because you will have many friends who say, let's go. If you take me to the doctor, which I often do since I'm a nurse for people, can we stop and shop at? And I have to go, no, I can't do that. And it takes them a while to understand that it is an important part of me being the person I want to be the rest of the day. So good friends, good family can also prevent pain, but also reduce emotional fatigue from having to worry about, oh, I'm not enough because I can't do all that. They love me as I am.
They love you as you are. And we have to realize that these things, napping, resting, are survival techniques. Thank you, Susie, for that. Those are really excellent ideas. Ken, can you put the energy management slide on? And Jill, welcome. Thank you for coming in at such a difficult day, your first snowstorm.
It was.
Yes, I did introduce you before you were here, and I wanted to say that as a therapist, how do you advise clients to change their negative cycle of fatigue?
Oh, I would I would say, first of all, Susie is so well spoken, and so many of the things, Susie, that you brought up are important.
I've had polio a long time. 78 years worth.
Oh, yeah, it was joy to listen to you. You know, in terms of, first of all, I'd say when it comes to advising clients, I think the fatigue often surprises them. You know, if you've had polio, you have had periods where you've had to slow down. But sometimes I have people come in who are like, nobody told me that fatigue was part of this. And like we've talked about, doctors don't necessarily tell us that fatigue is part of post-polio syndrome, right? So in terms of how I advise clients how to change the negative cycle of fatigue, I'm actually a big fan of self-compassion. So the first thing I do is I ask people, how do they talk to themselves? Because if we talk to other people the way that we talk to ourselves, there's a very good chance we might not have very many relationships, right? And so self-compassion is recognizing what you're feeling. That's thing number one, because overwhelm is so many different feelings. It's the body sending us messages that we're not safe, that we're not in control, that we're not worthy, that we don't deserve things. It's all of those feelings at once, but just slow down and identify the feeling. That's the first step of self-compassion. And then we acknowledge that we're fatigued. We acknowledge that we're having a moment of suffering. And what I find is really helpful is if I say to myself, you know, Jill, everybody suffers. Nice. We all suffer, because that lets me not feel so alone in the whole situation. And part of the reason that, you know, having a disability later in life, when you've already had polio, part of the reason it's so hard is because we're comparing ourselves to how we used to be, and we're not giving ourselves permission to change. Okay. So we're not giving ourselves this permission to change. And then sometimes the fear of getting fatigue gets in the way of a lot of pleasure, right? I'm so worried that I'm going to get fatigued that I'm not going to set boundaries, like Susie was saying. Like, I took you to the doctor's appointment. I don't have the bandwidth to also take you to the store, right? She's thought ahead on those pieces. But sometimes we get in this mode of, I don't think I can do anything. And what I would say is, we don't want the fear of fatigue to get in the way of having pleasure, right? Whether it's going to a show, visiting a neighbor, just being able to sit outside, make dinner, make love, whatever it is, right? So we need to save some energy for those things. And then what if we just said, I'm going to try this thing, but I'm going to give myself permission to change my mind at any time, even if someone thinks it's inconvenient. Okay. I think what I've realized from leading post-polio support groups is polio survivors have had to learn to be the most accommodating people in the world. Accommodate other people for our disabilities, your disabilities. Accommodate people if, you know, something happens and I have to change gears. I think we need to remind ourselves that that's okay. We need to be our own best friend and have a lot of mercy on ourselves. And if you give yourself a lot of leeway to change your mind and come up with a new plan, if you do get fatigued, sometimes you find that a little bit of variety or trying something new actually gives you a lot of energy. You know, I don't know if you guys are introverts, but for me, it's hard sometimes after a long week to get myself to do social things on the weekend. But they fill me up. And if I'm too exhausted and I'm with friends and I say, you know, I can do an hour at your barbecue or something like that, They're fine, but at least I got to see them. At least I kept my social capital going. So giving yourself permission is to change your mind is a big part of handling fatigue.
We have a slide here called the 5 Ps, and maybe you could just mention that, what the 5 Ps are, the most important aspects.
Yeah, so the 5 Ps are pacing.
Ken, can you find that? It's further up.
We'll get there. There you go. Oh,
yes.
There, right?
Thank
So
you, Ken.
pacing. Do I need to do it all at once? Susie talked about a lot of these things, so I'll zip through some of them. You know, there are tasks that you have to do all at once. It wouldn't have worked if I washed my hair this morning and decided not to wash the shampoo out. I got to do that full task all at once, right? Right. But it's actually, I will tell you, it's actually easier if you break up activities into smaller activities. It's easier because it's easier on the brain, right? Think about the times that you've had to move in your life and the whole situation of packing things up. It's overwhelming. So what do? You do one room at a time, or maybe you do one part of one room at a time. So pace yourself, prioritizing what's the most important thing to do today. And I would add, if you're dealing with fatigue and some of the depression that comes from fatigue, what do you want to do today? Right? Do something you want to do. I try and bookend my day or bookend my week. So I start it with something I really love, even a cup of coffee. I make sure I end it with reading before I go to bed. So make sure you prioritize some of those things that really make life worthwhile for you. Can I do it tomorrow? I can be the queen of trying to get too much done in one day. But if I really sit down and determine what's important and who can help me with tasks, a lot of times I feel a lot more calm. Okay. Planning. Can I do it tomorrow? Positioning. Mona talked about this, and Susie, can I sit down? I don't know if there is anyone on this call who has never had to make any kind of modifications. And I work with a lot of people who end up with a neurocognitive issue later in life. And, you know, they've never asked for accommodation. It doesn't even cross their mind. They've never said, you know, my hands are weak. I can't fill out all your paperwork at the doctor's office. Ask for accommodation and ask for help when you're doing the positioning to set yourself up for success. It's fine, right? You asking for help gives other people permission to ask for help when they need it. And problem solving. Do I have to do this today? Right? And then if you find yourself being really hard on yourself, right? Are you making a mountain out of a molehill? And my other favorite saying is, do you have to die on this hill? Do you have to decide this has to be done today? Or would you feel better with a little flexibility?
Those are great tips.
Very good tips. I'd also like to just touch a slight bit on the idea that when I can't do something, I'm feeling, I think the word is depressed, and I've never felt that way before. What do I do about that feeling right now when I can't plan for something else?
You know, Mona, the first thing that came to mind is I remember when I was growing up, my mom had 3 little kids, right? I was the oldest. And I remember my mom would always say when things were really hard or busy, like, I just need to do something for myself. Mm-hmm. And that's that whole piece of, can I be my own best friend? Because if I can be my own best friend, right, then I can be a good friend to other people too. But first, it's got to start in here. I often will have people, this might be a helpful exercise. I'll have people draw their internal landscape. Draw where you feel fear. Draw where you feel shame, right? And just take a look at what the right side of your brain, which is where all the feelings and emotions, sensations from the body come in. Take a look at what that right side of your brain is really feeling. Where are the places in my body that I feel relaxed? You know, for some people, it's like, can you just identify, are your earlobes stressed out right now? Well, no. You know, like start with the little bits. It is depressing though, because I just think when we have to slow down, right, then we're even more in our head, and sometimes we're alone, and then we don't have the shock absorbers of other people to take our focus off of ourselves. Did that answer the question?
I think it does, and it's something that people with polio, when we grew up, we were just told, just, you know, you can go for it. You could do whatever it is you think you want to do. Whatever I'm asking you to do, you can do it. And we did it, and we kept doing it. And then all of a sudden, and it was all of a sudden, we got post polio. We didn't know it was happening to us. Many of us had a few clues about it, but it was never pointed out. And unfortunately, we don't have the doctors that we had back when we were kids. Those doctors are no longer practicing. So they don't know, the new people don't know what polio is and post polio. So I just keep looking up for other doctors and other clinics and other support groups to give us some advice. It's not our regular kind of depression. It's not something that was caused by someone else or other events. This is caused by our physical disability, which we didn't know we would have. And the doctors never told us there was going to be after effects. And other disabilities have after effects, and they know about those things. Ken, can we go on to the slide, studies for polio survivors? That's the percentages. After this. There we go. There are many statistics about polio survivors and falling down. 60% of polio survivors say they're afraid of falling. Well, it's only natural. 75% of polio survivors fall at least once a year. 60% of polio survivors fall 2 or more times a year. Most falls occur while walking or later in the day. That is fatigue, and we don't even recognize that we have fatigue. We need to look at these things. Anytime you fall down, you risk your health and your future. This is something we don't want to do. We're not adjusted for it, and we don't know what will happen. Even more important, nor does your general practitioner know what will happen when you fall. Tell your doctor you fell. If you hit your head, go to the hospital, even if you don't feel that it's a difficult thing. As polio survivors, we must remember that you don't just fall when you're walking. You could even fall from a seated position. You could fall from movement. You can fall on that slippery floor. There's some kind of a floor at my restaurant that is always, it's like I'm walking on ice. And they say, no, it's clean, but they've got a natural wax in it. So watch where you're going. Look down. That's the safest way to know what's happening. The next slides are about ergonomics and the 90-degree rule. I'm sitting here and my arm is not at a 90-degree angle.
We're going to wiggle around, Mona.
Yes. And I have had an occupational therapist come to my house and point out what it is that I'm doing that is wrong. My elbow is not touching the table while I'm moving the mouse. And then my shoulders hurt. So these are the kinds of things you need to look at: how you're standing, how you're sitting, how you're moving. we're oftentimes at the computer. This is the perfect position if you're sitting at a computer, and this is the tabletop model with the pull-out keyboard with your arm resting on the chair. And I believe the second slide, yes, is when this is the one that I do. I have to learn how to change my table. This is the 90-degree rule. If you're sitting at a table and your elbows need to be resting. Even here, you see that her arms are 90% on the table and a little bit her elbows are off. If you can even move your arms right up to the elbows, your time at the computer will be more restful, and your degree of all those pain words that I used earlier will not happen. Susie, can you tell us some of the risk factors for falling?
Sure. Next slide, please. There's a whole lot of risk factors involved in anyone's potential for falling. But we as polio survivors really have a personal responsibility because we know we're in the fall risk group. I would start with ones that come to mind to all of us. Oh, if I'm dizzy, if I'm feeling a little like my head's not working, if I start to get up and I get woozy, that's postural hypotension. That's a major thing that's going to stop me in my tracks and make me say to myself, okay, I need to sit here for a bit and get myself together before I start moving. Pain and fatigue also increase our risk for falls. It's just that we're tired. We're not moving right. Our body's not working right. Those of us who have, and I like Jill's word, neurocognitive disorders, and also like degenerative disorders like osteoporosis, which I don't know anybody my age who doesn't really have, degenerative joint disease, muscle weakness. We are all at risk for falling, and we have to plan on that. So we must be ever vigilant. I have to say to myself, what if I get dizzy and I fall on the floor? How am I going to get up? So every day I roll out a mat and I do my physical therapy, and then I do the crawl like a baby, and I go to the nearest piece of furniture, and I luckily am able to use my left arm, which is better, to get my elbow up on the piece of furniture, whether it's a table or this big chair, and then I just hoist myself up like a little toddler would when they're learning how to walk. But I sort of call it my crab walk. But it works. But I know living in a retirement community, I can't count on both these hands the number of cases I have been told about of people who have fallen on their floors and have been unable to get help for days. They couldn't access their phone. No one was coming to check on them. So I would encourage you to learn to do the crab walk and practice like I do. I mean, it's a little embarrassing to be crab walking, but my husband is usually involved in something else. And plus he's very supportive if I crab walk around the living room. Impaired vision, hearing, we all have to make sure as polio survivors, one, we read in good light, but also that we get our checkups, because if our vision changes, that's not going to help. That we go and see our ophthalmologist once a year is better for us than making it every 2 years, which seems to be commonplace where I live here. If we are incontinent, it is important that we have surfaces that we walk on, like Mona's talking about that restaurant. I would be too scared to go. Yeah. When my husband and I married, he literally took up this beautiful tile floor and put down a bouncy floor like a kid would have so that if I fell, I would bounce a little. And so then in our kitchen, because, you know, we're older, we're not the best at not spraying the water sprayer out of the kitchen sink. He installed carpeting, and it is down with tape. It's not a scatter rug. It is totally down with what I call tiger tape. It's some sort of very thick tape. And so it can't move. So if something squirts out or I drop an egg on the floor, I'm not going to slip in it because the carpet's going to absorb it and the carpet's not going to move. And even if I can't clean it up, I've got somebody else who can help me clean it up. So you have to look about your accommodation measures. As my right arm has gotten weaker, and then interestingly, the more times I have COVID, it seems to get worse. I can't reach the shower head to pull it down, and you want to spray everywhere. So my husband got this little holder for the side of the shower. So in one of our showers, the shower head is on the side thing. So all I have to do is stand there and move my arm a couple inches and pick it up and use this spray. And it's total it wasn't an expensive accommodation, but we just had to look at, okay, if I literally, I think, stood in the shower and he looked at exactly where it had to be to make it easy for me to get to it. Simple accommodation. But you have to keep thinking of this because we keep changing, because I am now weaker in my right side than I was 10 years ago. Okay.
And these weaknesses, it's okay. These weaknesses come about without us realizing. You're saying 10 years ago, but over those 10 years, things slowly changed. And when they slowly change, we don't notice it. One of the things I want to say when I go to different support groups, which are invaluable to people with polio, go and find different support groups. Every person who's there talks about falling, and their biggest fall, they remember it for 20 years. What happened to them, how they fell, and what they've done about it. But we also don't think that it's going to happen again. So we get used to the small changes in ourselves, and we need to look at all the differences in what we're doing. And Susie, those were some great ideas.
Can we go back to that slide just a moment? Because I want to make sure that we talk about how isolating ourselves is not the way I feel better and I feel safer. It is rather that if I schedule my social activities and I hang out with my friends who care about my nap, that's how I'm not going to fall when I am out. So it's actually having those social relationships, keeping in contact with my loved ones every day. I mean, I have a schedule. I have 3 children. I know exactly when I'm talking with them each week. And I got a surprise call on election day from my grandson, just to calm his grandmother down. He lives in Colorado. Hey, he knew the storm was coming. He goes to UC Boulder. So he's like, Grandma, I'm just calling to make sure you're all right. I know you're worried. But you got to keep up those dialogues so that you have the sense that you're cared about, so that you care about yourself. Yeah.
I would add to that, Susie, one of my other pieces is I need other people to compete with what's going on in my head, because otherwise I will just spin, right? Especially if I'm in pain or tired.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's good to hear other people's thoughts and what's going on in their lives, and realize that, as I said to my husband today, I am so thankful for what I've had, because I've been pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Pretty lucky to be a nurse, so I could figure out some of this stuff, to get the understanding that I have that I can share. Without being a nurse, I might not have that. Yeah.
That was so valuable in your book to hear all of the things, the medical side to what we need to know. I want to just go on to the common medications. Ken, if you can put that slide up. And Susie, if you want to just mention briefly about these different reasons for falling, and it has to do with medications that we do take.
Sure. I take people to the doctor because they want a nurse to take them. And a lot of my friends are hard of hearing. So sometimes they don't hear what the doctor says, so they don't respond. So I need to be their voice and say, my friend is worried about this. But they do change their meds a lot. And meds that specifically cause you to feel dizzy, cause you to feel unsteady when you rise, are meds like antipsychotics, anticonvulsants, benzodiazepines. Like many people may be on diazepam to stop spasms. They may be on something like Flexeril to stop spasms. Those are the medicines that are going to cause you to feel a little woozy sometimes. So you have to be very careful about how many you take and keep track of your side effects. Same things with antihypertensive. Drugs that end in OLOL or PRIL, you be very careful when you take those because those can cause you to stand up and fall down. And also diuretics, because diuretics are bathroom pills. That's what they are. They make you go pee more. So you have to schedule times to go to the bathroom. You know that I know that if I'm going to have a conference call at 10 a.m. every Saturday with my son in Colorado, that I get all that done before, because we might talk for an hour and I'm not going to want to have to rush, So I, as a director of nursing, reviewed meds of many hundreds of people, but I had a pharmacist who did it with me. And having a pharmacist you trust can help you figure out when you put all these medicines in your tummy, what could happen when they all mix up together. Wow. My chief role when I take my friends to the doctors is to say, no, that doctor just ordered this and stop this, because my friend won't know that. And that helps each doctor know where that patient is. And I also keep a list for them of their med, how much it is, and all the major side effects and the rare side effects for them. It helps to keep track of your meds.
That's really, really good to hear, Susie. And we do have a slide on the golden rules of preventing falls. Could you just
some of them I've mentioned already?
Yes.
And I think what I would say in total, be careful how you get up. Always use your rule that I want to think about this before I get up. I'm going to wait 30 seconds before I get up from the couch. I'm going to wait 30 seconds before I get up in the middle of the night from the bed. I'm going to make sure I can feel the back of my legs against the chair of the bed. And then I'm going to get up, because then my body is ready. If I have a locking device, I'm going to use that lock on the assisted device so it doesn't move. I would also, as this slide said, I do strength training of the muscles I have, which I know is disparate from how many people were brought up. And I work at maintaining the strength I have. I don't do anything fancy. And again, practice crab walking if you have a sense of humor.
Crab walking, furniture surfing, wall walking.
Yeah, wall walking.
These are all polio words and actions that we did. We never really named them before. The next slide, Ken, is we have already discussed it. It's look at the ways that you can get up from the floor. Practice them before you fall. Make sure you're not going to fall. Make sure you can get yourself up. Have a device that calls someone. We have many different things that we can use in our lifestyle. And the next slide is words of kindness for ourselves. If you accept yourself, accept your love, and keep moving forward. If you want to fly, you have to give up what weighs you down. Talk to yourself like someone you love. That's Jill's advice. Talk to yourself. Tell yourself it's okay to stop. These are words of kindness. We polio survivors can feel overloaded with all that we have to do to address our fatigue and keep ourselves safe from falling. I hope you all remember that we need to be kind to ourselves, that is the most important thing in your life. Some days are better than others. We have to accept this. We need to respect that we are trying to do our best. Giving ourselves time for pacing and rest is a gift we each deserve. Even though I said go to bed for 2 days, that's not wrong. That's good. You need to stay resting until you are rested. We don't know what it means to be rested. We never did that before. We're now, many of us, over 60. We didn't have to rest up until we were 60. Now that we're over 60, it's a new word, and it's not a swear word. It's a good word. Learn to accept your rest. Giving ourselves times for pacing and rest is a gift we each deserve. I hope these lessons in our talk today will help you feel stronger and better prepared to prevent falling and hurting yourself. I want to say gratefully, Susie and Jill, your words of wisdom are wonderful, and truly we need to understand these special polio needs. It's not just for us either. It's for anyone who's getting older. These words are for everyone, specifically for polio because we never had to. Now we need to. I want to thank the audience for truly understanding our special polio needs and for our friends of people with polio for being here with us. I want to say that our next talk will be in December, on December 4th, but then myself and my panel friends will be taking a winter break. We need the rest and we need to be happy. Make sure everyone understands that it takes a lot to make a presentation like today. And it is exhausting, but it was well worth it to be able to talk to any polio person. Find your support group near you or farther away. There are many support groups right across the US, Canada, and even in other parts of the world. England, Australia, they all have excellent support groups, and they're there to talk to you. Talk to them. I want you to be happy and to remain well rested. That is the solution to polio. Let's not have polio fall stories. Let's have polio rest stories.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's a wonderful opportunity to talk. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.